Be the villain.
It's cool. So over here.
Be the villain. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm going to remind people to ask questions early because sometimes we don't get to all of them in the course of a show. So if there's something important you need to ask or a topic you really want discussed, be sure to ask it early. I'm popping out the YouTube chat so we can keep an eye on that as we talk. And, I wanted to cover, some observations and maybe talk about the web as a wild west, because I feel like a lot of people don't get how chaotic the web can be. But the first topic I wanted to go over today uh, is the kind of lack of news in search. It seems like everything's pretty quiet, and the things that are being rolled out seem to be like related to, auxiliary systems like pay-per-click and stuff like that. And there, do you guys feel it too? Do you feel like there's a lull in like search innovation?
In search and I will take a step back. This being an election year in the US, there are certain economic patterns that, we there tends to be a slowdown in election years and spending, and there tends to be a general fret. And it's not unique to this one. This goes back, decades. It's a historic pattern. And so things get a little quieter. Businesses stop, they pull back on the reins a little bit. And as soon as the election is over, either my person won, yay, now we can go back to work, or my person didn't win, damn it, now we can go back to work. So, I've kind of seen it not only just economically, but in all the SEO groups, starting, early summer, even into the spring a little bit, it's just quieter in terms of, communication and everything else industry wide. I think that's kind of just where we are right now. The groups that used to be really, really active and, dozens of posts today now have, three or four or five. So I don't know that it's unique to just SEO innovation. I just kind of think it's, where we are right now.
Yeah, so if it feels kind of slow to you, it does to me, but maybe I'm hallucinating. It also kind of feels like AI slowed down. And so I know that the innovations, they don't come out, in a fluid series. They'll be, innovation is spotty at best. Um, but yeah, it seems you might be right that it's like all things are kind of slowed down right now.
Yeah, I think the AI innovations there for a little bit was, this one has a great language model, and then somebody else has got a bigger one, bigger, badder one, that on the performance metrics does better and things like that. So I'm not sure that the escalation is there, but I'm seeing a lot of new tools pop out. Like it was a couple of weeks ago, Terry Power was giving, webinar and showing some of the new tools that he played with. And I started playing with a couple of them going, damn, that's really nice. That's a kind of a cool, tool to play with, so, and, I have friends that, tend to be off in those, that they're rooting around in the woods and finding these little acorns and bringing them back. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I'm not sure exactly what I would do with that, but it's cool. So
Yeah,
I think
I,
it's kind of branched out from,
I
just
can
straight
agree with that.
words. Yeah.
Like the entrepreneurs and the engineers, I mean, they're running with it now. They're like, all right, let's take these foundations and build things.
Hmm.
Um, but the foundations are what feel slow. And so yeah. So, just my observation is it's kind of slow, and it feels remarkably slower than past years at this time. So it always felt like there's a lot more going on. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, you're used to the Q4, ramp up, and you should be seeing, more of that historically. And it just feels like, I'm not seeing, as many ads. I'm not seeing, even just going to my mailbox, there's not as many catalogs and, just early season promotions, even for Halloween, there's barely any of that going back, around. So it just kind of feels like overall the reins have been pulled back a little bit.
Yeah, normally this time of year, there's a lot more panic and fear, and people are upset at Google, and, it just seems quiet.
Well, so if you look, you've sometimes tracked the volatility sensors that are out there and stuff like that, and they've been at basically high levels, since the update started, and theoretically it ended, weeks ago, but you couldn't tell based on the volatility stuff. So there's other things
Yeah.
around. Sites are getting tossed. I mean, when people are talking about SEO, they tend to be talking about what's going on. My shit's bouncing up and down and up and down, and I'm not sure what or why or what to do about it.
Yeah, and it seems like in SEO news, there's just like a constant article just pinned at the top. It's rankings are volatile, and they just never take it down. They might, make a new one that says the same thing, but it's like every day. So yeah, I'm just starting to feel like, this is different somehow. So not quite sure how to put my finger on it, but
Yeah, what's it look like on the enterprise side, Charles?
So yeah, that's what I was just going to say. We haven't seen a update to the Googlebot in several weeks, which lately we've been every 10 to 15 days, even a minor version build came out, and I haven't seen anything for a while. I was thinking of doing a bot watch update. And I'm like, there's not really anything to talk about. With that said, so I have a little bit of angst in the sense that I kind of feel like it's the calm before the storm. The reason I say that is because I've been noticing lots of weird things that Google's been reporting lately. I see this in our search console. I've seen this with my personal sites, just weird stuff popping up that I've never noticed before. Problems getting robots.txts or problems crawling pages, looking for pages that never existed. I don't know why it's looking for that. That would suggest to me there's work going on in the back end. They're not ready to release anything new. They're trying to fix something on the back end, or they're trying to do what a lot of folks are doing right now, or at least on the news side, I should say, making sure everything is solid going into the election. So one thing I can say that like Google did for the past couple elections is they locked down the sites that would appear for certain queries. So if you did certain, especially like election result queries, the search universe was down to like 30 or 40 sites, and that was it. And there was nothing else that went in there. And it was interesting when the leak came out, was it 6 months ago now, or whenever that leak came out, there was something in there that talked about having essentially it was confirming that, yeah, the Google would decide, yep, this group of sites is all we want to show. And they did that for a couple different things, not just for elections. There were a few things where Google would have basically a lockdown and be like, yep, this is all we're showing. And the reason I always put it in, folks will sometimes think that's a bit of a conspiracy theory. I'm like, well, really what's happening is Google does not want to be embarrassed on the election day. They don't want, a Ted or a Charles or a Lee or somebody putting up an article either to troll Google or because they just decided, oh, I'm going to put this up because this is what I believe. And then it's showing up at the top of Google and then it making Google look bad. That's that's just bad PR. Yeah,
Or
COVID was the one. COVID and vaccine was the one where Google pretty much locked down what sites they were willing to even show. So it didn't matter how many links you had, how well you're optimized. You didn't probably show up there unless you were a couple specific sites.
yeah, or having a lorem ipsum candidate win the election. It's
Yeah.
like you don't
Yeah.
want that.
That would be a PR nightmare for them. So that's one of the reasons why I'm assuming they do that.
Yeah. You think maybe that's kind of the flight in terms of fourth quarter where all the big brands are up there, that it becomes it's a back to this trusted seed set because nobody's ever heard of Ted's trinkets and things.com, but Amazon, Walmart, we've heard of these companies. And so if somebody's searching for, a trinket, Ted's not going to show.
Right. But I will say, again, going back to the leak, according to the documentation within the leak, it didn't look like this was manually curated. So that would suggest that Ted could get himself into the list somehow. I don't know how he would do it, but he could theoretically get himself into the list. I think the only way he could do it is, again, if you want to troll Google, you're going to have to look really real for a long time and then at the last minute kind of do the old switcheroo. You're not going to, like a Babylon Bee or something is not going to show up because Google's like, yep, nope, that doesn't pass whatever standards we have. My own personal conspiracy website.com or whatever, not going to pass. But if someone were to have an actual site that did everything, according to whatever Google wants it to do, and then you decide at the last minute to swap it out, I don't think that they would catch that because it looks like it's algorithmic and not manual.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've noticed is there's a discussions result block in search now for like keywords like DUI Lawyer Los Angeles. And so they're kind of putting search result 1 and 2 right below the sponsored ads. And then they're doing local in this discussion group. So there's kind of a new way to beat position 3 by winning the top discussion group listings, and there are 3 of them shown. So now there are 3 opportunities to beat number 3, but not get 1 and 2. And so it to me, it kind of smacks of featured snippet alternative because it's another algorithm way of bypassing the ranking algorithm to get into top real estate. So that's something I saw. I was kind of surprised to see it because that's going to lend itself to all kinds of exploits, especially for long tail keywords, things of that nature that might trigger it. Because now all you have to do is figure out how those things are selected, which is either going to be recency, popularity, or relevancy, and then game those posts to get whatever message you want into those top spots. And it's another case where if you're number 1, those are 3 places between 2 and 3 you can take up in your goal to get more of page 1. So that I thought was interesting. Have you seen those yet, the discussion results?
I haven't paid that much attention to Google lately.
I've noticed them. I've also noticed people also ask has been popping up a little more often than it seemed like Google was pulling that down a little bit, but now I'm seeing it showing up most of the time again. So I don't know if Google changed their mind, if someone flipped the switch by accident, but the end of people also ask does not seem to be the end.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, DUI Lawyer Los Angeles has the discussions and forums section. So that's the one that I saw. And it's before that showed up, they were kind of blended more into the organic results. We were seeing all those discussion things, throughout the whole result set. Now they have like a dedicated area where they appear. And so that's interesting. And it looks like, it fell straight into, above position 3 when it's there. So the other thing I want to talk about is kind of the wild west of like websites and SEO tools. So I've only talked about this topic on a couple of occasions on how tools fail and why SEO tools never agree and things of that nature. And so I wanted to first talk about the SEO tool side, because all tools fail. There is always an amount of force that you can swing a hammer at that will wreck the hammer. So no tools are indestructible. All tools fail. And some tools aren't good for some jobs. So, if a hammer isn't the right tool for all problems, and, with SEO, people seem to lose sight of that. So it's important to understand how tools fail. And one way that tools fail, being a software developer in this space, I've found that most tools don't put a lot of emphasis on how Google saw the page. There are many ways to get the HTML, but if you're not getting it the way, Google got it to see it, you're going to see something different. So, for example, Google will sometimes change the viewport size in Googlebot. For a long time, they would have a 12,000 pixel tall viewport to trigger lazy load. And so if your SEO tools weren't using a 12,000 pixel tall viewport to trigger that lazy load, you would get different HTML from your render. And so you'd have these tools where a bunch of them would say, oh no, you're over optimized. And another tool would then say, no, you don't have anywhere near enough content. And the difference might have been the lazy load. And the question becomes, for that one piece, which one is the most correct? And the answer is whichever one is closer to what Googlebot saw. Another way that these tools can have differences like that is in the amount of render time. People think that a page is either rendered or it's not. And that's not how it works. It's actually a function of time. And historically, Google would give you 20 seconds after document ready, then it would take a snapshot of the HTML right at that point. And anything drawn to the page after Google takes the snapshot is invisible to Google. But in recent years, Google changed that amount of render time from 20 seconds after document ready down to 4 seconds. And so now your JavaScript frameworks and web services have to be highly performance tuned and very fast, because anything that gets drawn to the page after 4 seconds after document ready is invisible to Google.
So Ted, with respect to that, you see, a lot of SEOs talk about when they switch hosting on their site, that all of a sudden their rankings, go up or go down. Is that a potential contributing factor to that?
Yeah, if hardware was the issue, then yeah, that could make a difference. We see things like there could be a battle of resources between like web servers and database. And so as your websites grow in traffic scale, one of the big things that you do is you start separating your database servers from the web servers, let them be independent hardware. And it's interesting because a lot of SEO tools that do rendering, there's a few methodologies where they do that rendering. One methodology is headless Chrome, but headless Chrome was kind of designed to do screenshots and thumbnails. And so it doesn't give you an ability to do arbitrary wait time in the rendering. So if the tools are built on headless Chrome, you're getting a time equals 0 capturing of the DOM. And a lot can happen to a page between time equals 0 and 4 seconds after document ready. And so again, that could result in these tools all say, you have too much content. These tools say you don't have enough. And that's another way that you can get those different results. And again, the correct answer to that problem is whichever one is closer to what Googlebot did. Um, another way that tools can differ in their outcomes is random numbers. So if your SEO tools don't use the same sequence of random numbers that Googlebot uses on all pages, then any random content rolled on the client side will be different than what Googlebot saw. So Googlebot's using the same random number sequence on every page. So when it rolls random things client side, it rolls the same ones every time they visit. So it allows them to not trigger change detection because you're randomly selecting things. And so uh, your if your tools aren't using those numbers, they're technically getting different HTML than what Googlebot saw. And so that's another way that the tools can disagree.
I have a great example actually of tools seeing things, or really the question is the tool seeing the same things the same way as Google? And this is actually using Quora, and this is going back several years. I ran a scan of one of the pages. It was while I was with Verizon, and a page was like the iPhone 7 page or something like that. I don't remember what it was. And I remember Quora coming back and saying the keyword was not in the H1. And I remember yelling at my computer. Actually, I was yelling at you, Ted. I was like, what are you talking about, Ted? It's right there. I'm looking at it. And then I realized, oh no, we had the copyright symbol after the word iPhone, or it was Apple iPhone, I think was, and we had the copyright symbol after Apple. I'm like, huh, okay. And then I apologized to you. I said, okay, Ted, I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. It's not technically there. But then the question was, does it matter? It's not an exact match. Is it a broad match? Does Google consider it the same thing or not? Actually ended up becoming a whole test I ended up running to see, does Google consider it the same thing or not, having that copyright symbol in there? But it's a good way of, sometimes the tool might read exactly what Google reads, but then the question is, how is Google taking that data? Having that copyright symbol, does Google consider that important, or does Google not consider that important? Did it help with my relevancy, or did it hurt with my relevancy for that page? And
it probably did a little of both. It dinged you on the exact match score component, but it gave you credit for the partial match.
And that was the results of my test. So I ran a couple tests, and what I did is I took I took a couple different things, 1 word and 2 word, but the word always had a copyright symbol. And I found that if you had the copyright symbol after the word, when it was a 1 word query, it did not seem to matter because you had an exact match. If it was a 2 word and you had that copyright symbol in the beginning, in the middle, it did seem to matter when you excluded all their factors. To your point, Ted, though, I still thought it was important. I didn't suggest we take it off the page, not only for legal reasons, but also, is this a relevance? Because there were other pages that were similar to that. We ended up just actually adding the keyword in different ways on the page, and it helped us out. But it was a good way of saying that sometimes the tool will give you a result, and you have to understand, what is the result that it's telling you? Is it telling you, is it that I was missing my H1 or didn't have my keyword in the H1, or it was just saying, hey, look, this exact phrase is not in your H1. And then I, as the SEO, need to decide, does that really matter? Is that important, or is that not important?
Yep.
One item I like to throw out in terms of just all these tools, because I agree with you, Ted, there's a lot of tools. And Lee, you mentioned all the different AI tools. There are I feel like there's 1,000,001 AI tools coming out. They all kind of do, I don't want to say they do the same thing, but they do variations of the same thing. Like they're just different faces on the same die, so to speak. The warning I would give folks, because I'll admit I'm hard when it comes to tools. I love shiny objects. I will go chasing after them constantly. It's a bad habit. I love buying tools. It's a bad habit to be in. And I've been challenging myself a lot over the past year. is only buy a tool if it solves a problem I have. So Ted could come out with this great whiz-bang tool, say, hey, look, this is what this thing does. But if it doesn't solve a problem I currently have, probably shouldn't get it. If I want to get it to play with it, okay, that's fine. Get a tool if you want to play with it. But I would challenge folks, especially with all these tools out there and so many do very similar things, is ask yourself, does this solve a specific problem I have? And if it doesn't, you may not want to get the tool. You may want to say, all right, save your money for the tool that does solve your specific problem.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I was sharing with a couple of people this past week. We have AI tools that can produce content in a variety of different ways. It's not just, it can produce words, but it can take words and, create videos or PowerPoint presentations, PDFs. So you can take your PDF and turn it into a podcast, or, you've got all these cross-pollination things. So, Charles, if you don't have a tool that, turns a podcast into a PDF, is that a problem that you need to solve with my new software that, does that fancy thing? Or are you looking at it and going, I'm not really needing PDFs right now?
Well, I'll look at that. And so initially I was like, ooh, that sounds cool. I want to do that. And that's that shiny object. Ooh, shiny red ball. But yeah, I would say I don't need PDFs or podcasts. I forget which way it was which way it was doing.
Either way,
doesn't matter.
Fine.
Yeah.
I got both tools. They're both available for you.
Yeah, if I have podcasts, I'm like, well, I have podcasts. Do I want to turn them into PDFs? I'm not sure. Like, I don't really feel like I need to do that. Now, I could have a brand and be like, hey, wow, this could help my brand. Someone could say, someone with an agency say, hey, this might help me throw yet another signal. Someone could say, hey, if I take this podcast, turn them into PDFs, I can then take those PDFs and syndicate them out and get links. But that's solving a different problem. That's solving a link problem, not necessarily, do I need PDFs? And I know some folks, I think it was Brian Cato talked about this, but figure out how to use tools in unconventional ways. Mm-hmm. So Lee, if you say, hey, I have a tool that turns podcasts into PDFs, I'll say, well, I don't need a bunch of PDFs, but I could use more links. And if I take those PDFs and then syndicate them out to a bunch of different locations, now I have links pointing back to me. So the tool doesn't have to necessarily solve the explicit problem that the tool tries to solve. I would say, look at the tool and see, what does it do? And does it do something that you need it to do? If it doesn't, again, nothing wrong with playing with tools, but you might not want to lose focus. It might be better to stay focused on what you're working on.
So are you at all persuaded by my new training PDF, Your Way to Number One? Is that
sorry?
No? Sorry.
Sorry, not interested.
Man, he's got discipline this year.
You got it. There's too many tools. I'll go broke otherwise.
Yeah, not only that, you'd be sleepless because, each tool takes, some hours to play around with and consider all the possibilities. And then there's a new one. It's like, you don't even get the possibilities out on this one because there's a new shiny thing.
Yeah. And what I find, and Terry, I see you put this in the chat here, that sometimes the tool solves a problem you didn't realize you had. And that's a good point too. Like, okay, I am not, I don't know, I'll just make something up. I'm not optimizing my images. And I didn't realize I wasn't optimizing my images. My only challenge to that is, is it solving a problem by not having optimized images? Am I hurting myself organically? I mean, most of us, I think, would say yes, but I would say test it first. Manually go out and change a couple of your pages or something, optimize your images, do what this tool would do. And if you see a balance, if you see any increase, then yeah, you need the tool. You didn't realize you need the tool, but you need the tool. But if it doesn't really do anything, then maybe you don't need the tool. Which I know we all love tools. I love tools. And a lot of people out there saying, but I want to buy the tool, Charles. But like, I'm not saying you can't buy tools. I'm just saying, with so many tools, how do you determine what you should or shouldn't get?
So does it help you if I recommend Terry's Image Optimizer 3000 tool that goes into your website and rewrites those alt text for you?
So I've made a new rule for myself. Even if Lee or Ted is recommending a tool, I'm still going to ask myself, does this solve a specific problem I have? Or does it expose a problem I didn't know I had? I think that's a good clarification. Does it expose a problem I didn't know I have and then fix it? If the answer is no, then I'm going to have to say, no, sorry, passing on this one.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Do you have questions the answers to which will inform you what the limitations of the tool are? Because, like, one question I almost never hear out of the SEO community is, what technology are you using to grab the HTML of websites? Like, people just don't ask it. And it could be curl, it could be wget, it could be some custom thing they built, it could be headless Chrome, it could be embedded Chrome, it could be the debugging port of an actual Chrome instance. There it could be embedded Firefox. It could be a Visual Basic web browser component. There are so many different ways to get that HTML, and people aren't asking that question because there are differences. Like, if your tool is built using wget or curl, it's probably not rendering. Or if it's built using a custom HTTP request
Mm.
script or something, it's probably not rendering. Um, but if you're using Firefox, you could still get issues. Like, Firefox may not render the page in the same order of operations that Chrome would. So, for example, you could have two conflicting redirects in your source code. One could be a meta refresh redirect. The other one could be a window location redirect in JavaScript. And depending upon which one of those the browser honors first, you get a different outcome for what the HTML is. And we've seen things like this happen with crawling tools. Probably the most recently we've seen it was a few years ago with Screaming Frog, where on a Shopify website, Screaming Frog would see different headings than what we saw in Chrome. And so we were like, what the heck is going on there? Why are the headings all wrong? And it turned out to be an order of operations thing in the rendering engine. Um, and so yeah, that you have to ask the right questions about your tools so that you can understand how they're going to fail. And it's not that, oh no, it's going to fail, so I shouldn't use it, but you should know how you can use it and reliably understand what the data is.
Yeah,
And so,
that's a great point because I know you get the variation of this question a million times. Quora says I have 1,231 words on the page, but this other tool says I have 1,600 and whatever words on the page. What's wrong with Quora? What's wrong with this other tool? Who's right? And a lot of times when you're the if you think about the tools as giving you the approximations necessary for you to make a decision, is the difference, relevant for that? Does it matter? Does one tool being off or both tools being off potentially, depending on how they're measuring stuff, does it really matter to your SEO decision? Is it close enough, for you to be able to get the results that you want? A lot of times people get hung up in that perfection thing, and there's just way too many. I've learned this over years by listening to you, Ted, talk about all the different things that can go wrong in HTML that browsers and bots and crawlers have to adjust for. If you don't close an H2 tag early on in an article, do you have a 1,200 word H2 now, or do you just make some assumptions and close it up and say this is what we think your H2 is? Or do you just ignore H2 altogether? If it's got an open but not a close, throw out the open and call it a day. Those are all different ways of dealing with that problem.
yeah, and that's a good call out. That's one I've never mentioned before. If your tool's technology doesn't use the same HTML tidy that Chrome uses, then yeah, different HTML if there are errors in the HTML. Um, And you're right. There are like other things where people will say this document is this one character encoding, and then they'll lie about it. Some people will lie about the character encoding of their document. Some people will get it largely right, but then they paste from a Microsoft Word document into their HTML and they get different encoded characters.
Mhm.
And then, ultimately, SEO tools have to like make sense of this craziness that can happen out there. And people start getting mad saying, why are there broken characters on this page? And yeah, it gets insane trying to track it down and go, oh, well, the characters you're talking about are this one encoding, and the page is declaring something else. And having to debug all of that, it is really a wild west out there. And tools break in different ways. Like one of the things in the past 4 years that really started breaking a lot of tools, in my opinion, is the dynamic classes being used by WordPress themes. There are some themes that can literally have thousands of CSS classes applied to the body tag. And if that logic goes on an infinite loop for whatever reason, it can break parsing of the document because you could get to megabytes and gigabytes of CSS class names all on the body tag. And not all tools can handle that. Other things are like page size, like engineering, you have to put limits. If you don't put limits on, that's how people make overflow attacks where they can run arbitrary things on your computer. You have to make sure that you're enforcing limits on things so people can't overflow in memory. And modern operating systems protect you from that more than older systems used to, but there are still overflow conditions that can crash your tools. One of which historically I used to use it in the early days of making web tools, was from the old Yahoo web directory, if you remember that beast.
Mhm.
There was a category that was society and culture, people, home pages, all. And back in the early to mid 90s, that was a static HTML web page that was about 11 gigabytes in size. And so whenever I'd write a bot, I'd always test it on that category in Yahoo to see if the bot could handle it or if it would choke. But yeah, that's, another way that, you could really wreck people trying to do competitive intelligence is that, if you see a bot that's going to analyze your content and the user agent, well, you just can throw them, 11 gigabytes of data. Choke on that, you bot. um, that'll probably abruptly stop that solution. Um, Another thing that I've been seeing is like the Cloudflare stuff where they do bot detection. This is another way that SEO tools fail, is if they do bot detection where you don't have your web RTC features enabled to verify that you're a video conferencing capable web browser like most modern browsers are. That's, one way they identify you as a bot. So if your headless Chrome isn't enabling those extensions for WebRTC, then Cloudflare might block your tool, which would then come back with a reduced word count or no word count. Very common thing there. And so, yeah, there are those types of bot blocking capabilities as well. And so, yeah, just we'll get into some questions here, but I just wanted to talk about what a wild west it is, and hopefully You can ask better questions about your tools, so maybe you can understand, the data you're working with better. Terry says, I miss Yahoo pipes. And yeah, there's a number of technologies out there like that, the if this then that, and I forget the other one that everybody likes. It's just not coming to memory, where you can route all the inputs and outputs and automate processes. um any final thoughts on the Wild West?
No, I think, as people understand just, how much goes into that, then, imagine, your Google or, Bing, and you're trying to crawl pages and make sense of them, the decisions that you make or the changes that you make in those bots, impact those, and minor changes that you make on your website, changing a theme, or changing some class names, or some JavaScript on the page can really change the way that the crawler sees your page, or doesn't see your page, depending on what's going on there. So things fluctuate. I mean, that's what makes it a wild west, at least from a volatility standpoint.
Yep. All right, so let's take a look at some questions here. We don't have a lot, so it might be a short episode today. Let's see. Search Made Simple says lorem ipsum has more substance than any candidate up here. Big step up.
So he's
Um,
advocating for a lorem ipsum candidate in Canada.
okay. Uh, yeah, I'm surprised there aren't SEO contests popping up around election time. Um, let's see. Chris Jagger asks, guys, you have theories or tactics to optimize for AI overviews. What's the current situation? I know that there are some people out there that have specific tactics, or they claim to. I haven't seen any studies of that yet, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means they haven't been shared in that SEO testing type of way. Um, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your pages can be trained on. So if these models aren't training on your content, you're going to have a hard time, being represented well. And a lot of people using Cloudflare are blocking Common Crawl because they have the bot detection on, and the Cloudflare bot detection will block Common Crawl, so your content can't be trained. So if you've over aggressively blocked all bots except for the one you like, Googlebot, then you might have shot yourself in the foot already for being represented well in AI. What do you think, Lee?
It's interesting. I spent a little time. I was at Holly Stark's Dark AI conference over the weekend, so I was talking to a few SEOs about this. And one of the interesting, there's a group of us that was talking about this particular problem. We dove into it for a little bit, and what it looks like is OpenAI is pulling their data from Bing. Not a surprise, with that relationship. So if you rank highly in Bing, for whatever the query is asking, you're more likely to appear in that, AI snippet. Google, their Gemini looks like it's pulling from the top ranking Google search results, and Claude is pulling from Common Crawl. So how do you optimize for it? Well, that's three different processes, but basically, if you rank well, you'll do all right in terms of that. At least that's what it looks like today.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and give all the search executives a big clue on how to monetize for AI. All right. Because they don't seem to be figuring this out yet. So I'm just going to give them the answer and hope they can work it out from there. But you can make an API for Google search for use in AI tools. So that way people can make amazing AI applications that use Google search. Just in the terms of service, just demand that the ads for the search will be sent as part of the response, and they must be presented in a certain way with the AI result. And then that way, people can actually target their ads for being parts of prompts requesting Google search results for different things. All right. So all the search engines could do that. And all you need is a way to surface the ads as part of the response and tie it to the terms of service. So, hopefully they figure that out. You'd think that pay-per-prompt advertising would have been out of the starting gate, but they still haven't seemed to figure that one out yet. Let's see. All right. Blog to video tool that you had success with. So was there a specific tool on that?
No, but here's the thing. So there is one. It's actually a video to blog tool that I purchased recently to test. And if you put a white hat on, you're looking at this and saying, "Oh, I'm just looking to take content that I've created and sort of repackage it for other other channels and stuff like that, so I can expand my reach and I can make sure that I'm on all the platforms where my particular customers might be." Me, I'm a dirty little SEO. I'm just looking about how easy is it to spin that stuff up and get me a link, and does the link move the needle? So, it's not that I need my blogs to become videos, but if I have a website and it's got 300 blogs, and I can fire up a tool that very quickly allows me to go put those out there and get me 300 links from YouTube, that's something I might be interested in testing. But I don't have any results on any of those things right now. But all the AI tool, if you put blog to video AI tool, there's probably 24 of them out there that are people are using and have comments and reviews on, and this one's really good at this and that one's really good at that, or whatever. So that'd be my suggestion.
Let's see.
And I'll give Charles my affiliate link to all of them so he can choose.
Any thoughts on the possibility of Google serving different search results to different users depending upon political leanings? And I'll rephrase that to be Google's or the users, because both are technically possible. I think it's problematic. All right. So I think the solutions aren't great. Like, for example, I will do an audit for, a artist that does iron peacock sculptures. And by the time I finish the SEO audit, I am getting banner ads for peacock products all over the place, and I'll probably see them for the next 8 months. All right. Now, nowhere at any point in time did I express a preference that, these products are for me, other than I did some work on a short occasion over a week or two. And so, we're seeing that stuff already in advertising. We see it definitely in YouTube. If you watch certain content creators, or if you search for certain topics frequently, those things will appear more in your YouTube feed. And so we're definitely seeing that type of echo chamber in things like the video platforms. And search can be that way too. There is a personalized thing where if you visited websites and Chrome remembers that, those might get a bump in the rankings just for you because you keep going back to that site. So it ranks higher for you than it would for everyone else because you frequent it. So it's totally possible. I think it's problematic because there are reasons you would look into something for a while, but that doesn't necessarily mean that 8 months of ads targeting you is a good way to allocate resources. What do you think, Charles? You're all over this topic. You're running those campaigns at your company.
That's right. So I would say in general, so the first question was like, hey, is Google changing results based upon someone's political leaning? That'd be a lot of processing on Google's side. First, I'd have to, if I were Google, I'd have to know what is Ted's political leaning. I had to figure that out and figure it out with some kind of consistency. And then I'd have to know, well, this is the leaning of all these sites. Now, a lot of folks will say, oh, that'll be easy to process. But Google has to do that for lots of people. I mean, trillions of people and lots of sites. And even if they have a limited number of sites they do this for, that's still a lot of people they'd have to process. I don't think that's something that they would bother doing. It sounds and then what would be and then again, let's think about Google. They're still a profit-based company. What would be their profit motive for doing that? Would they really make that much more money? I mean, I can give example of the people that click on things out of anger. They hate watch things and they hate read things, and it's not because, oh, Lee's putting something up I like, Lee's putting something I hate, so now I'm definitely going to watch it and read it and then get myself all worked up over it. So there'd be the argument, should we do it that way instead of giving Ted what he wants, give Ted what he doesn't want to see and make him engage more. So I think there's a lot of processing problems that would happen with that I don't think Google does. I think Google is more concerned with looking like they're the third party, looking like they want to appear like they're being fair, but ultimately they want all the clicks. Come election night, you're going to see something on Google. Every news organization wants to show you the election results. Google's going to publish it right on their homepage and completely undermine every news organization in the entire country, in the entire world, by putting all the election results right on the page. They get a feed directly from AP, and then because they don't want people leaving Google, but they still have to look like they're unbiased. Whether they are or aren't is irrelevant. That's what they want to make sure appears. So I think monkeying around with that would just add risk for them from a profit standpoint.
I agree with you, Charles. I think it's much more interesting. If I'm Google, it's much more interesting for me to know that right now Ted needs a plumber because he's got an overflowing something in his house. Because then if he's checking Gmail, I want a plumber ad, so he'll click and I make money. I don't even care which plumber it is, as long as they click on one of my ads. So I will serve that to him. At every venue, I will serve it to him. YouTube, Gmail, you name it. I want Ted to click on that sort of stuff. And that would be the way to optimize Ted. But that's still a lot of processing power, to a degree. So.
Yeah, and there's not a browser mode that allows you to differentiate from I am searching this because I have a need versus I am searching this. I want to search this as if I had a need because I'm trying to learn or understand something. And so there's not a switch in Chrome where you can, be truthy about your intent and not have it result in a 10-month of ads following you for something you were just looking out of academic curiosity. Let's see. I've heard that Google Ads do not work anymore. What are the suggestions to have landing pages that will direct people to a product sale with SEO? I would like to run a Google ad campaign, but with SEO. Well, I think ads still work. The problem is for certain kinds of retail, the cost per click makes it really hard to nearly impossible to make a profit. So if you have a lot of $20 to $40 average carts, pay-per-click is really tough when you start playing 25 cents to $1 per click. So in a lot of those cases, you go underwater on those things. But if you're selling, $25,000 patio sets, well, then you can afford to pay $1 per click versus, if you're Walmart selling a $30, patio chair, that's not going to be able to compete. I think Google Ads does tell you a lot of very useful information, specifically about which keywords can actually convert. So if you set that up right, you can actually figure out which keywords are most important to SEO. Because the keywords that convert in ad campaigns are the ones you want free traffic for because you know exactly the value it's delivering to the customer. And so that can tell you where you're wasting your time and where you're not. And then it also gives you the ability to equate your traffic to equivalent ad spend value, which will make you look really good to the executive team because now you're speaking their language. So yeah, Google Ads and other ad platforms as well, I think, are definitely still viable. The other cool thing is that there's synergy between SEO and Google Ads specifically, because typically when you SEO a website, the quality score, if you do it right, the quality score on the AdWords side of things tends to go up. So that often means that good SEO can get your cost per click down on the paid side and get you better ad position placement for that money. And so there's definitely synergy there. The other thing is it's a surefire way to the top of page one. So keep in mind that that's one thing. One thing that people don't think about is that you don't always need to be the number one ad. If you have an ad management system that can control your bid strategy to keep you in the third ad spot, that can save you a fortune. And so having a platform that can auto adjust the bids to keep you at number 3, but not paying the number 1 and number 2 price, those things can, make or break your ability to advertise for certain margin products. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah, I think you really, you drifted onto something I think is really important. Folks have to understand their business. So often I'll hear, and I hear this with SEO as well, like, oh, that doesn't work or that doesn't work anymore. And it's like, well, let's just take a step back. If you are using AdWords to sell a $1 widget, that probably doesn't work, and it probably doesn't work anymore. Maybe it worked when you get bids at 5 cents. But even if you got bids at 5 cents, you're going to have a pretty good conversion rate in order to make money. So don't think of it in terms of, too often folks will look, I see this in enterprise all the time. People will look at a specific tactic and say, does it do this one specific KPI? So will ads drive traffic? Yes, it'll drive traffic. Will it drive profitable traffic is really the question that we should be asking ourselves. And often folks don't ask that kind of question. And maybe it's not that it doesn't work for, maybe you can get 5-cent clicks and you have a $1 item. Maybe the problem is that your conversion rate's just horrible. That yes, you get enough clicks, yes, you get it at the right number, but your conversion rate's the problem. And if you can fix that conversion rate, then that's the problem. Or let me throw another idea out there. It's not this $1 item that we're trying to sell and we're buying clicks for 5 or 10 cents. Maybe we're not making money, but that's okay because the lifetime value of this customer is worth a heck of a lot more than $1. $1 is actually a bit of a loss leader. So the dollar item we're selling is just to get their name. It's worth spending $1 to get their name into our mailing list so that we can then mail them and mail to them and sell a higher end item. So you really have to understand your business and understand what are you trying to accomplish, and not just look at it from terms of will it get me traffic or will it be expensive, because it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I'm going to pile
go
on
ahead.
to okay. I'm going to pile on to Charles for a minute because I agree with everything that you guys have both said. But I'm going to add one is the one of the parts of the question is landing page redirecting to another page and stuff like that. It's probably against Google's terms of service to have ad theoretically going one page and redirecting to another. But you have to understand that there are that's a professional business. Pay per click is a professional business. And if you think about, I'm going up against Walmart, I have me. I'm thinking, oh, maybe, I want to take my patio chair and I'd like to run some ads to it. So, at least patiochairs.com can, get some sales. Now I'm going up against Walmart. How many people do you think Walmart has managing their online ads for Google? How much technology do they have that I don't have? How are they monitoring that stuff hour by hour, minute by minute? You're going up against, a professional machine. So the idea that I'm just going to get out there and, throw up, ads at a certain cost and, all of a sudden the money's just going to start rolling in is a little bit foolish. The people that I know that are making money in pay per click are very professional about it. They test, they understand the value of being in that first position, that third position, or even on page 2 and below with those ads. They understand, they test the headlines, they test the offers, they test the page that you're landing to for conversion and spend time optimizing all of those things. That's an entirely different business than SEO. So, just because I have a page that I'd like to sell some stuff doesn't necessarily mean that I'm set up to go and compete in that marketplace with people that live, eat, and breathe this stuff. So that's another element of, Charles was looking at it from, business standpoint, the numbers there, but also do I have the time and energy and the capabilities to go up, in some of these markets against very, very big players who have, access to things that I don't, on my smaller budget.
Yeah, but what a lot of SEOs don't realize is that, for a $50 ad spend, you could find out that of the 50 words your client wants to rank for, only 3 of them get any clicks in a week. And wouldn't it be nice to know which 3 those are?
Yeah.
And then you can review the competitive landscape of the ads and see how people are winning those clicks. And so there's a wealth of information, costs you $50, totally worthwhile.
That goes back to what he was Charles was saying earlier about Brian Cotto, alternative uses for the tool. You're using the tool to see which ones I should SEO. You're not using the pay-per-click to make money. You're not evaluating it from an ROI of the ads. It's an information metric that you're
yeah, because you might not be able to win paying for the ads. Like cost might be so high that you'd have to spend so much you'd never make profit, but the information can tell you where to invest the SEO. And that's a game that if you can get some traction on would be totally worth it, especially if the pay-per-click team can't bid on it because there's not enough margin. So, I mean, you're totally the hero in that story. If you win the clicks, they can't bid on. And I can't imagine a better reason to never let that SEO go. So yeah, I think there's some wins in there somewhere. Let's see. Let's see. The only blog to video tool I've seen achieve $40 engagement is my own. So it sounds like you're making a tool there. Um, so yeah, not sure I fully understand, but cool if you're making new tools. Let's see, any more questions here? Sometimes non-optimized, newly indexed websites jump to a second page in a few days. Sometimes it takes ages for even properly optimized new website to get to the second page. What determines the initial rankings? A lot of SEOs are looking in Google Search Console and they see activity that Google does in very short test windows. And they'll put up a new page and they'll see that, oh, I was in Search Console, I was ranking number 3 for this amazing keyword. You were ranking 3 for that amazing keyword for 11 impressions. And then Google said, not a good fit. You didn't convert. All right. So that wasn't you earned that ranking. That was Google was trying out your content to see if there was, a magical thing it needed to be aware of regarding it. And you probably fail that test as we all do. So if you're using Search Console as your ranking tracker, there's a lot of different issues with doing that. And I believe you're going to have a lot of headaches. Um, Now, the other thing is that typically new websites, we see them get indexed in 24, 48 hours when Google is in good working condition. And you can even start, at position 1. It's technically possible for some keywords for you to enter search for the first time in the number 1 spot. And I know because I've done it. And so it's possible if you know the right things to do that could happen some of the time. Um, so, if your website is falling, like if it started off well and it's dropping, then something is off with the SEO. Something's not quite right, and Google is losing confidence that you're a good fit for the keyword. So I would evaluate what you're doing and I would look for technical SEO issues. And I notice you say sometimes it takes ages for even properly optimized. That assumption, properly optimized, it rarely survives a Cora report or similar report that's going to evaluate your tuning. People often get hurt feelings when they find out how many deficits they have in the SEO that they thought was awesome. And it's not that your SEO is bad, it's that it's incomplete. There were things you didn't think of that make all the difference in ranking. And you're having a hard time because you can't imagine the things you can't think of. And so that's why you need tools that can point out, hey, your competitors are going strong in these areas and you're not. And you're going to go, oh my God, I didn't even think to use that schema object. And so, there's something about your content. If you're not ranking number 1, there is something about your content that you're not doing that they did. And it's not Google, having an opinion that they made a good point in paragraph 2, therefore they beat you. No, it's algorithmically based. They're stack ranking based on a ranking score, and your ranking score is diminishing or isn't good enough to really compete. And so you need to fix your ranking score. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I'm gonna add to that. There, it may be your on page may be perfect. And it may be that you're going up against, an Amazon category page with, 15,000, backlinks and, everybody else. So there's that aspect of the SEO that you have to pay attention to as well. But I also want to go back to something I'd mentioned this last week on Fight Club, and it was an article that they were asking John Mueller about best practices for launching a new website, and he made a comment that I found that matched up against my own experience. So this is not tested data, but he said that if Google's first crawl of your website, it finds pages that indicate you're under development, come back soon, or hello world, for a WordPress site, then when it does come back and you have content, it is much slower to, I guess, trust, that your content is ready and go out. It takes longer for you to rank. So his recommendation was, don't turn on your DNS until you're ready for us. And I've seen that, my own, because sometimes you put out a new site and bam, it just goes. And another equivalent site, it's like pushing it, you keep pushing it through the mud. You can't get it going for a little while, and then it goes uphill the way you thought it should have week one. And that's something that you can't see in a report, in a tool, in Search Console. You'd have to go back to the logs and say, hey, did Google come and crawl the site and find my hello world page? And if so, then that's another piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It could be possible that you only get one chance at a good first impression, so don't waste it.
Yeah.
And every time I've created a new website and started in the #1 spot on Google with it, good first impression. I even made sure that my backlinks pre-existed my page going up. Let's see. Is there a free tool I can use to find all in title search results? Google seems to be hiding this now. Yeah, I don't know of one. I know the special operators aren't very reliable in Google. They change how they work and they retire some. So yeah, I know that there's non-free tools that can tell you how many words are in a title. One comes to mind, but yeah, none that are free though.
It's also hard because if you're trying to use some of those operators, over and over again, you're going to need proxies, because very quickly Google says, hey, are you human? This seems like, a bot search and stuff like that. So even if you have a tool, there's some additional costs that come along with some of those that do that.
Unless you really love picking the fire hydrant squares, because then, yeah, then it's awesome.
It's good times.
Let's see, my questions disappear. If you switch the YouTube chat to live chat, they'll probably show up. So if it's only showing you the top chat ones, then your question wasn't top chat, so it's just hidden to you. Switch to live chat. Let's see. At Charles, couldn't Google just scrape political biases from Facebook accounts? Well, if they wanted to be sued by Facebook, which I don't think they do, Facebook could afford a lot of lawyers. You're right that, they might be able to do that. But,
I think it goes back to Charles, was saying that, they can do some of these things without getting on Facebook, through your searches and everything else. Or inferences can be made, but it's the computational power to determine that, Ted leans this way, so he's going to like these things and not like those things, and then where's the profit in it?
But I don't talk about politics on Facebook. I definitely don't put it in my profile. So, for a certain percentage of the population, that wouldn't work. Let's see.
Yeah, but
Political targeting
that
is
in your,
yeah.
I was going to say, if we know in your Chrome history, that you tend to visit, gunsandammo.com or something like that, there's likelihoods of you, leaning one way or another. If you're visiting certain, political sites, all the search history and stuff like that. If you're reading certain articles, that talk about one candidate or another, one issue or another. I mean, that's what Eric's talking about. It's the psychographics part of it that, we can make some inferences and, pretty accurately put you in a bucket of where you're likely to be politically. But, then again, if they know, where can Google monetize that? That's the
Yeah, and odds are, it's probably not how you're well, what they're probably seeing is that you favor content that tells a story. So you favor, this candidate gets owned in this way type of content. And so they can draw some inferences based on the fact that you like reading about that candidate getting owned or that candidate's in trouble for this. They and there's also a bias there that might not be the search, it might be the media, because the media is never showing articles that says this candidate's really good in this way and that candidate's really good in that way. You don't see those articles. So it can only go one way, right? Um,
Well, yeah, but there are some. I mean, that's one of the things that's where Cambridge Analytica, you know, got into, some of the troubles because they were using, the Facebook data, which, said you tend to be interested in this, that, and the other. But before all of that was going on, you could do it, offline by finding, what sort of websites you like, for tracking you. So if you're visiting Breitbart, as an example, there's a very clear indicator of, a political leaning, or, if gun sites or things like that tend to, differentiate those things. And the same is true on, all sides of this. So there are indicators just based on your browsing history of where you're likely, to be, on various, of not just politics, but on various, aspects. And that's kind of one of the things that you have to do now. A lot of people talk about in Facebook ads, you can't target income as easily. You can't target some of those like political leanings. But if I know that, people in this particular party tend to frequent, cats.com or, whatever, then, you can start to say, looks at cats.com and this, and now you've narrowed in and you've got a high probability indicator of, political leaning or, whatever else.
Yep. So let's see. We get a thanks for the good advice. Here's some for you. Buy some gold before the prices go through the roof. Uh, I don't know. Like I know that you can protect the value of your money doing that. But I don't think it's going to grow the same way certain like AI stocks will grow and do 10 for 1 splits, like when Google was new and shiny and did a bunch of splits. You kind of want to be on those because those are where people end up becoming receptionists with millions of dollars of stock options. That it's that kind of magic that a lot of us in technology are hoping to get. But yeah, if you think the sky is going to fall and that the value of money is going to go to nothing, then yeah, having a commodity is safer than having worthless paper. But um, you know, I I don't know on that one. I guess everybody has to decide for themselves. What about you, Lee? You gonna invest in metals?
Well, no, but not necessarily because I, agree or disagree with those sort of things. But I think you're right. It just depends on, your viewpoint and what the probability of, different things are. If this happens, then that and the impact is, here makes this particular set of actions advantageous and these, disadvantageous. So,
And gold, the value will probably continue to rise. But it's really pricey to get into it. I know it's getting harder and harder to mine it, but you never know. They might find a new way to mine gold, and then the value will go through the floor because, it's unending. And so, it could happen. Um, and, I think you have to be careful in putting all your eggs in one basket. That would be the other thing. Let's see. He says that I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't give investment advice. I'm not either. I'm not either. So you have to do good research. You got to figure out what kind of opportunity you want, and it's going to come down to, which way do you think the world is going to go? And if your read of the room is right and you make good calls based on that, who knows? Um, yeah, to put it into context, like we all believe that SEO is going to change because of AI, but what we can't do is tell you, is that change coming in 2 years, or is that change coming in 10 years? Is that change coming in 5 years? We don't know. We can't narrow it down. The only certainty is that change is eventually going to come, but none of us are great at telling you exactly when that'll happen. Let's see.
And Ted, I'm not a financial advisor either, but it's always a good idea to buy something before it goes through the roof. The problem with
buy
that
low,
is,
sell high.
Yeah, just pick the winners. That's all you got to do.
yep. So
Yeah, how hard is that? Um, let's see. So, franchise website question. I do not see a franchise website question. I guess repeat the franchise website question. Oh, here's one. Having a hard time to rank a franchise website of a client, which is AHS, a domain, sorry, that's has just typoed, which has a domain name, franchise brand name plus keyword. Can it can it be because of the brand name authority? Well, here's the thing. Brands get special treatment. So normally a website will only get, one or two results for a keyword because Google wants to show lots of different things in the results. So there's this filtering by domain name. The exception to that filtering is brands. So when you search for Donald Trump, everybody gets like two results. But when you search for Donald Trump CNN, you get all CNN pages about Donald Trump. And so the inclusion of the brand causes different behaviors in the search engine. And I suspect one of the things you might be up against is that effect. You're not the recognized official brand, and they're getting all the love from the brand keyword. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, if you look at rotorooter.com and you're kind of indicating, you have, let's say, something like rotorooter emergency plumber.com. So you've got the brand plus, keyword in there. If you were affiliated with the brand, like, and connected somehow from the main website to that, it's an offshoot, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to rank. If you're not ranking, it's because, your normal SEO signals are missing. But if you're conflicting with it and somehow Google's algorithms going, you're not Roto-Rooter, then there could be your problem. So I'm not sure which way to answer that.
Let's see.
Terry's going to say something.
Ed,
Go ahead, Terry.
having worked with some franchise websites, sometimes the problem is all the franchisees have the same website. So you are limited in that if someone's looking for an Avon rep, they're not going to list all 10,000 Avon reps and in any particular order, except that Avon's main site's going to come first. So all those franchises are identical, and you are usually limited to the changes you can make on those pages. So they can be very difficult to rank. A better way is to, buy a domain and use that for your franchise site if you can.
So like terrypowerAvonking.com or something along those lines. Well, actually, that would get you in trouble, wouldn't it? Because you'd be using the brand.
It depends on your relationship as a franchisee, whether
As a
you allow it
franchisee.
or not.
Let's see, 3 questions in one. Do you guys set up a new site for each test you run? If not, how do you prevent previous text spoiling the new test results? I think the type of test will change the answer. Like if it's a will it index test, you can run it on any page on any domain and get a definitive outcome. Because if it indexed at all, it indexed. So a will it index type test, then yeah, absolutely. You can run it on the same site and existing pages, new pages, doesn't matter. If it's a will it boost type of test where you're like, I want to know if a keyword in italic tags is stronger than just a plain mention of the keyword on a page, that's a different type of beast because that's a very subtle signal. So you would have to control for a lot of variables where it could be lost in the noise. There's a concept that we call minute random variance. And what that is when you eliminate all the factors off of a collection of pages that mention a test keyword, every time you search the test keyword, you'll either see the random order of the test results. So each time you search, you get a different outcome of the test, or it'll show you the test pages in the order in which they were indexed. So usually controlling all your variables shows you one of those 2 outcomes. And then from there, you're hoping that the thing that you're testing has a strong enough signal to overcome those. So oftentimes you want to make sure that you index the pages in an order that you wouldn't spoil your test. You would want the signal of the italic tag to overpower the order in which they were indexed. So you'd want to account for things like that in your test creation. And if it's a strong factor, it's a hell of a lot easier to test. And the absolute most difficult signal to measure is no signal at all. You will chase that for a long, long time. So yeah, it depends. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I'll add a couple more. You're absolutely right. I mean, it does depend, if will the previous tests interact with the current ones, or more specifically, will it interact with some of the current ones? And that's more of a problem. So, if I were going to test the italic, non-italic, I have 10, test domains and stuff like that. I might throw a keyword up, and, on 5 domains, it's in italic, and on 5 domains, it's not. And I want to see that all 5 of the italic tend to, rank above, the controls. But if some of those domains, had been involved in link tests, well, now you've got some link power muddying up the stuff. So in that particular case, no, you couldn't, the domains, the pages aren't equivalent. So you can't really to do it that way. So it just depends on, whether those previous tests are going to interact with it or not. Sometimes on an existing page, on a live site, because test sites don't always have to be the clinical clean. I have a page out there and I'm like, I wonder if I go, move the keyword in all of my H tags to the front. So it's a leading keyword. I wonder if that's going to, impact, the ranking. So I might do that on a few of my pages and, just track what happens to them in the SERPs. Do they move up from 24 to 8, or, do they bounce around plus or minus 2 or 3 positions, in which case that's really no movement, no signal. So you're right. It depends.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's really easy to spoil your test. I will often talk about fairly shared anvils. Fairly shared factors can spoil a test. It's because that minute random variance might be built in a way where it's like the amount of random ranking score you get from one search to the next is a random plus or minus, 1.3% of your overall ranking score. And so then if you put your test keyword in the URL and you put your test keyword in the title tag and you put your test keyword in an H1, those are heavy hitter factors, which are going to impact your ranking score, and your plus or minus 1.3% gets pretty big. It might be bigger than the signal of putting the test keyword in the italic tags, in which case you have fairly shared anvils on your test pages and your results are lost in the margin of error. So just note that it's easy to mess up a test with fairly shared factors on all of the pages. I did it to all of them, but that might have put the signal you're trying to measure into the margin of error.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do you also prove your expertise in something like brand consulting when you're seen as just the SEO guy? Well, typically, back in the day, you managed or created a known brand. So reputation is 90% of that formula. So the guy that made the Real Networks logo drove a Porsche, and everybody knew him as the guy that made the Real Networks logo. And so, that became his professional brand. And so if you have no brands under your belt, it's a tough sell. What do you recommend, Lee?
Yeah, well, there's two effective strategies there. One is referrals. Terry recommended me because I did brand work for him and he's really happy with it, got him great results. And the other is just case studies, and both of those are just proof. Because I can go and say I'm a brand guy. Just like I can say I'm an SEO, or I can say I'm an expert on X, Y, and Z. Doesn't necessarily make it true. What makes it true is your ability to demonstrate some actual results out there. So that would be the quick answer there.
All right. How does Cora make sense of LI and A tags, given there's going to be so many edge cases for these types of tags? Well, simply put, we're going to count important words in those zones of the page. So we can see the exact matches in LI tags and A tags. We can see the variant keyword matches in those zones. We can see the entities in those zones and count them up. So typically, there will be factors for entities and A tags and LSI keywords and LI tags. But you're right that, LI tags could be a top menu navigation. It could be an HTML list article. It could be footer links. LI tags can be used for lots of things. Cora does not tell you how the tags are used. So that's not what Cora does. But you can follow the data. So when you see that they have 700 entities and LI tags, you can follow the data to the page and view source and see what the heck they did on the page to get 700 entities into those tags.
The other one that you got to bring up here is you can also have nested tags, because within an LI tag, you could have an italics tag. It's wrapped around an A tag. So, a keyword there would be a keyword in an A tag, a keyword in an italic tag, a keyword in an LI tag as well. So, nesting also affects things.
Let's see, having a hard time we did that one already. Ted, do you still offer consultations for Cora users? Yeah, if somebody's having a problem with my product and their page, yeah, book a meeting. Let's talk it out. Let's see what we can figure out. Yeah, always done that, always will. AI stocks, what AI stocks are there besides NVIDIA? Well, most of the processor companies are trying to get a piece of NVIDIA's game, so you could probably research in those areas. Um, and there's also Microsoft, which, owns a big part of OpenAI. And I heard they were trying to build their own AI processors. I don't know if that project has moved at all. But yeah, there are definitely companies that you can figure out that are investing in this. So, Elon is making those robots. They look pretty interesting. You can see that Google's also investing in AI. There's a lot of startup ventures too, but that's a lot riskier investment, but potentially bigger reward if they take off. So, YouTube was kind of a crazy startup idea until it went big. But everybody before it went big was like, this thing's is going to be a money pit. You're going to have to pay a fortune in bandwidth, and you're talking about uploading gigabytes at a time when people have dial-up still. And everybody thought it was crazy until it worked. And so you might say the same thing with a lot of the current startups. They're crazy until they work, and then it's too late to get in on them. The main thing you got, go ahead.
I was going to say the other part of it is because technology is, evolving so rapidly, you get something that's the coolest thing today and you can't imagine something, ever being better than this. I got to invest in this. And next week there's something better, and that's one of the problems at the development level that we are. It's rapidly changing, and, things emerge, out of the garage somewhere, every day.
Yeah. But we don't know who's going to win the AI war, so I can't recommend that you invest in one company over another because we don't know. All we know is that, these AI companies, they're going to battle it out and somebody's probably going to come out on top. Your guess is as good as mine. All right, that's our show for today. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.